Welcome to the show. Harper Bennett, Claudia Reese. I want to start with a scene that honestly happens all the time. A family sits down at the kitchen table with one hospital letter, one cold cup of tea, and one very hopeful question. Right, so where do we apply for disability benefits? And the answer is not one form, one office, one neat lane. In the UK, you've got Personal Independence Payment, or PIP, Attendance Allowance, Disability Living Allowance, Adult Disability Payment in Scotland, and then disability-related support through Universal Credit. Same broad world, very different doors.
That phrase, different doors, is exactly it. Because people hear disability benefit like it's one giant supermarket aisle. It is not Tesco. It is more like 5 cupboards in different rooms, and one of them is weirdly locked. PIP is usually for working-age adults. Attendance allowance is for people over state pension age. DLA mostly survives for children and some existing claimants. Adult disability payment is the Scottish replacement for PIP, and Universal Credit disability support is tied to that whole means-tested benefit system, rather than being the same thing as PIP.
And that first sorting question matters more than most people expect. Not what's the diagnosis, but what benefit matches this person's age, location, and current circumstances. In project terms, sorry, I know, deeply on brand, you're not starting with the material specification, you're starting with the right procurement route. Wrong route, wrong paperwork, wrong expectations.
So if someone says, my son has autism, or my partner has MS, or my mum has dementia, the system isn't actually hearing the diagnosis first.
Not in the way families hope. The diagnosis matters as context, of course, but the real question is, what help do they need with everyday life and getting around? Can they prepare food safely? Wash? Dress? Communicate? Budget? Travel? Move? The system is obsessed with function, which is frustrating because people arrive with a medical label thinking that should do the heavy lifting. And then the form says, basically, yes, but what happens on a Tuesday at 8 a.m. when you need to get dressed?
And that distinction between label and function is where I see families hit a wall. They'll bring a consultant letter that says, in effect, significant condition, ongoing treatment. Important letter. But if it doesn't spell out what happens with, say, bathing or prompting or supervision, it may not answer the decision-maker's question.
Exactly. A diagnosis can be the headline. The claim is written in the small print of daily life. I mean, if you tell me spinal cord injury, I know something major happened. But PIP doesn't award points for the drama of the diagnosis. It awards points for the impact. How you transfer, whether you need aids, whether another person has to help, whether pain or fatigue or cognitive issues stop you doing something reliably.
That word reliably is one families feel in their bones, even if they don't know the system uses it. Because loads of people can do a task once, under pressure, badly, slowly, then collapse afterwards. And they're thinking, surely that counts. Claudia Reese, from your family perspective, that mismatch can be brutal, right?
It can, especially with children, and honestly with disabled adults too, because home life has all these invisible support layers. A parent prompts 10 times, a partner lays clothes out in a certain order, someone quietly monitors the stairs, the hob, the medication. Families normalize that because they love the person. Then a form arrives and asks what the person can do, and the family writes the optimistic version they've built together just to get through the week.
The heroic family trap. Oh, we just manage. Those 3 words should come with hazard tape.
We just manage sounds brave and can accidentally erase the very support somebody needs.
Yes, and one more wrinkle. Universal Credit disability support lives in a different logic from PIP. PIP is not means-tested and is about extra costs and functional impact. Universal Credit is means-tested and has its own work capability-related rules. So families often mash them together and think winning one automatically unlocks the other. Sometimes they interact in practical life, but they're not the same test.
Which means the opening move is almost administrative triage. Age. Nation of the UK. Existing benefits. Whether the issue is extra disability-related living costs, care needs in later life, support for a child, or income-related help through Universal Credit. Once you sort that, then the evidence question becomes sharper.
And sharper can actually be kinder, because then you're not asking, can I prove this person is disabled enough? You're asking, what does their day require? From them, from equipment, from other people, and which system is built to look at that?
Okay, let's sit inside PIP for a minute, because this is the one so many working-age families are dealing with. PIP looks at 12 daily living activities and 2 mobility activities. 12 plus 2. That number matters. Daily living covers things like preparing food, eating and drinking, managing treatments, washing, dressing, communicating, reading, mixing with people, and making budgeting decisions. Mobility looks at planning and following journeys and moving around.
12 and 2, so 14 buckets in total. And then points get attached to how much help is needed in each one?
Exactly. Each activity has descriptors with different point values. You don't get PIP because you have a condition. You score points because a descriptor matches what you need. For the daily living component, 8 points gets you the standard rate. 12 points gets you the enhanced rate. Same thresholds for mobility. 8 for standard, 12 for enhanced. 8 and 12, those are the numbers people should remember.
8 and 12. That's the architecture. And it changes how you talk about the claim, because instead of saying, they're severely affected, you start asking, where are the actual points likely to come from? Not gaming the system, understanding its design.
Let me try to explain it back, slightly dangerously. It's not one big overall impression score. It's more like collecting points across specific activities. And once daily living or mobility crosses 8 or 12, that determines the rate for that component.
Yes, with one tweak. It isn't collecting points like a loyalty card where every difficulty counts equally. It has to be the right descriptor under the right activity. That's why details matter. Needs prompting to engage with other people and needs assistance to wash their body are different activities, different descriptors, different point roots.
And this is where fluctuating conditions make people's heads spin, because some days are fine-ish, some days are a bin fire, and some are somewhere in the mushy middle.
Right, and PIP has a rule for that. The condition generally has to have affected you for the previous 3 months and be expected to continue for at least the next 9 months. 3 back, 9 forward. That's often called the required period. Then, for descriptors, the issue usually has to apply on more than half of days. More than half is the phrase to hold on to.
So 3 back, 9 forward, more than half of days. That's not just paperwork trivia. That's how someone with a fluctuating condition translates chaos into something the form can understand.
Exactly. If pain, fatigue, seizures, mental distress, bowel urgency, whatever it is, stops the person doing an activity on 4 days a week, that's more than half. If it happens in a repeating pattern, write the pattern. If mornings are worse, say mornings. If after one outing the next day is wiped out, say that. Don't average yourself into invisibility.
That line hit me. Don't average yourself into invisibility. Because families do that. We compress lived experience into this polite middle, and when you're used to adapting, you forget what counts as help. I remember with my kids, there were things I'd mentally class as ordinary routine that were actually 20 minutes of prompting, sensory negotiation, and me preloading the whole environment so the task could happen at all. To me, that was Tuesday. To the system, that's evidence.
That's powerful. And it also sounds emotionally awkward because you're being asked to describe your worst days without letting those worst days swallow the whole truth.
Yes! It's such a strange storytelling job. You don't want to catastrophize. You also don't want to accidentally write a motivational poster. Despite everything, I bravely eat one slice of toast. No. Tell them what that toast required. Did someone cut it up? Prompt you? Supervise because of choking risk? Did you skip meals on the other 3 days? That's the actual picture.
I sometimes think of it as describing the system around the person. What aids are used? What reminders? What supervision? What recovery time? What happens if support isn't there? Those details are often more truthful than broad adjectives like struggles a lot.
And what happens if support isn't there is such a concrete test, because capability with support and capability without it are not the same thing.
Right. If someone can shower only because another person stays nearby in case they fall, then the relevant fact is not showers independently. It's needs supervision for safety. That's a totally different claim story.
Let's walk the path. Someone decides to claim PIP. What's the usual route from first contact to decision?
First comes the initial claim stage, often called PIP 1. That's the basic information: identity, contact details, the condition, that kind of starter data. Then comes the substantial form, PIP 2, how your disability affects you. That's the one families remember because it's where the real evidence lives. After that, there is often a medical assessment, depending on the case, and then a decision.
And the PIP2 form has one deadline that people need tattooed on the kettle. Usually 1 month to return it. 1 month. Miss that, and you can run into real trouble. Claims can be decided on limited information, or the claim can fail to move forward the way you hoped. If you're struggling with the deadline, don't just stare at it in despair. Act early.
1 month. That is exactly the kind of number that disappears under stress.
Completely. Because the form lands when the person is already tired, unwell, or overwhelmed. And the questions look deceptively simple. Can you prepare food? Sounds like a yes-no question. It is not. It's really asking, can you do it safely, to an acceptable standard, repeatedly, within a reasonable time, and do you need aids, prompting, supervision, or physical help?
This is where vague, stoic answers do damage. I manage. Some days are better than others. My wife helps a bit. Those lines may be emotionally true, but administratively, they're nearly useless. Better is, I need prompting every evening to start cooking because of cognitive fatigue. If left alone, I skip meals 2 or 3 times a week. That gives frequency, type of support, and consequence.
So concrete beats noble. What else helps people avoid undercutting themselves?
Examples. Real ones. Tiny, boring, domestic examples. Last Thursday, I left the hob on. Twice this month, I got disoriented on a familiar bus route. My daughter reminds me to take medication every day because, without prompting, I miss doses. Decision makers are reading a lot of forms. Specific incidents cut through. They're memorable, and they anchor the descriptor to lived reality.
And keep the timeline consistent across everything. PIP 1, PIP 2, any assessment, and what family members say if they help. If the form says you've needed prompting with washing for 6 months, but at assessment it becomes, oh, maybe a year, maybe not, that can muddy the picture. Precision doesn't mean perfect memory. It means doing your best to line up the story so it reflects the same reality each time.
Is this a place where keeping notes for a week or two helps? Not a novel, just a log.
Very much. Short notes can be gold. Date, task, what support was needed, what went wrong, how long it took, especially for fluctuating conditions, because by the time you sit with the form, your brain tends to remember either the disaster day or the suspiciously decent day, not the actual pattern.
The suspiciously decent day is such a menace. It's like your body knows paperwork is due and goes, "Actually, babe, today we're fabulous." Then you write the form from that one weird Tuesday and torpedo yourself.
That is painfully human.
And talk about prompting and supervision. Families often leave that out because it feels less legitimate than hands-on physical help. But prompting is still support. Supervision is still support. If someone needs another person there to keep them safe, orient them, calm distress, or get them started, say that plainly.
I would add, if a family member fills in parts of the form, that's fine, but check it with the claimant if possible. Sometimes carers normalize needs, sometimes claimants minimize them. The strongest forms usually come from comparing notes. One person remembers the falls, another remembers the exhaustion afterwards, another remembers how often appointments are missed without reminders.
And then the assessment stage. Often that's the bit people fear most.
Because it feels like an exam, and most of us are bad at talking about need without apologizing for it. My tip there is boring but effective. Answer the question asked, then add the real-world example. Don't perform toughness. Don't perform helplessness. If the assessor asks about walking, don't just say, "It varies." Say, "On more than half of days, I can walk this far before pain makes me stop, and afterwards I need to rest." Keep bringing it back to what happens most of the time.
And if support from another person is part of how the task happens, include that every time. Not once, not buried, not assumed. If your spouse prompts medication, mention it under managing treatment. If someone reassures you through unfamiliar journeys, mention that under mobility. Repetition is not redundancy if it clarifies separate activities. One thing I wish more families were told up front: this can take months. Not days, not one tidy fortnight, months. So plan emotionally and practically for waiting. Keep copies of forms, keep notes of dates, keep expectations flexible. A claim can succeed, it can need challenging, circumstances can change, and reassessments are part of the landscape.
Months is important because families often organise hope around the idea that relief is imminent. If the process stretches, the stress stretches with it.
And waiting does weird things to your memory. You start second-guessing what you wrote. You replay one good day and think, maybe I exaggerated. Or one terrible day and think, maybe I forgot half of it. That's why copies matter. Your past self did the hard work. Don't make your future self reconstruct it from panic.
Let's hit the common mistakes cleanly, because these are the ones listeners can actually catch in time.
First, focusing on diagnosis instead of function. I have fibromyalgia is not the full answer. Because of pain and fatigue, I need help preparing meals on more than half of days is closer. Second, leaving out bad days because you don't want to sound negative. Third, forgetting supervision and prompting because no one's physically lifting you. Fourth, assuming one successful day proves capability. It doesn't, especially if that day took ages, wasn't safe, or wiped you out afterwards.
I'd add a fifth: inconsistency born from haste. If the form says one thing and a relative says another, and the assessment introduces a third version, not because anyone is lying, but because everyone is exhausted, the claim gets harder to understand. Build one factual spine and stick to it.
I want to sit with that fourth mistake. One successful day proving capability. Because that's so seductive. We all do it. Well, she went to the school play, so clearly she can travel. He cooked once, so clearly meals are fine.
Yes, and it's such a trap. A single success can be expensive. It might require 2 days of recovery, intense prompting, pain medication, someone else doing all the prep, and canceling everything afterwards. The system is supposed to care about what can be done reliably, not what can be dragged over the line once for a meaningful occasion.
That distinction matters so much for families. We celebrate the school play, the wedding, the one outing, because of course we do. But celebration is not evidence of no support need. Sometimes it's evidence of how much support was mobilized to make one important thing possible.
Which brings us to the hardest part, I think. The emotional question underneath the form. How do you ask for support without feeling like you have to perform disability for the system?
Oof, yeah. Because nobody wants to flatten themselves into a tragedy brochure. And a lot of disabled people have spent years fighting to be seen as capable, interesting, funny, employable, sexy, complicated humans, not case studies. Then a benefits form arrives, and suddenly you're being asked for your most difficult, least polished truth. That can feel like betrayal.
I think the reframe is this: you are not performing weakness. You are documenting workload, the extra workload of daily life, the extra people, time, prompting, aids, recovery, planning, and risk. That's what support is meant to respond to.
Documenting workload, that's a very Claudia Reese phrase, and a very useful one.
It is good, annoyingly, because it lets people keep their dignity. You can be resilient and still need help. You can be proud and still need prompting to eat, or supervision to bathe, or support to leave the house. Those things are not character flaws. They're facts about how your life currently works.
And if families can hold on to one thing while they wait, maybe it's that honesty is not disloyalty to the person you love. Naming the support need doesn't reduce them. It may be the thing that gets the system, however imperfectly, to finally see the labor already happening around them.
That's where we'll leave it. Thanks, Harper Bennett. Thanks, Claudia Reese. And to everyone at that kitchen table with the cold tea and the forms. Take your time. Write the real Tuesday. And we'll see you next time.